Welcome to Exploring the Bio-Edge. Today we're going to discuss a remarkable video of a leopard stalking and then attacking a troop of baboons in the Kruger National Park, South Africa. It's fascinating for many reasons. Look forward to diving into it with you, Anthony. Thanks.
Yes, well, here we have what seems to be an adolescent, possibly an adolescent female, inexperienced leopard. And the reason it seems inexperienced is because between the 3 video clips that were taken at a particular location in Kruger National Park, the first 2 on a certain day and the second one on the following day, the way this animal behaves seems rather naive, and it manages to not to get into too much trouble, but it seems to be just an animal gaining experience that has to learn the hard way. Now, in the first 2 videos, what we see is this animal walking down the side of the road past a bunch of cars that have stopped partly to watch it and partly to watch some baboons that are several minutes down the road. And at one point, it leaves the road and starts walking in the shallow, grassy, I wouldn't call it a ditch, but the sort of groove on the side of the road, still walking fairly fast, not crouching visibly, until it gets within range of a group of about 25 individuals of the Chacma baboon, consisting of perhaps 4 or 5 adult males and the rest females and juveniles. And without pausing, it rushes forward at exactly the same instant as the first alarm call comes from the group. So we don't know whether one of the baboons spotted the leopard and gave a call first, or the leopard started charging and at that same instant the alarm call was given, but the 2 things coincide completely. And so there's no suspense in the stalk. There's just the animal walking down the road until it's within range of the baboons and then charging full speed onto the road in what seems to be an attempt to snatch a juvenile, rush off with it before retribution is applied, and then get up a tree in order to devour its meal. But the most interesting aspect, Anthony, of this this beautifully revealed interaction is that instead of all fleeing, the group of baboons shows some heroism in the sense that initially one and then several other adult males come towards the problem. And what we see is an amazing spectacle in which an adult male baboon of perhaps 30 kilograms essentially tries to run headlong into a full-speed charging leopard of perhaps 45 kilograms, in other words, considerably heavier than the baboon. And as soon as they clash with each other physically, several other males and some female adults join in a kind of a melee that is so hectic that it's difficult to see what's going on. If you slow it down and watch it frame by frame, you can see that it doesn't seem that any of the baboons gets in to have a proper bite. And that's because the leopard does what cats often do, which is it lies on its back, ostensibly exposing its soft underbelly, but defending itself with 20 razor-sharp claws that have every prospect of blinding or injuring any attacker. And so by by means of that wonderful feline defense, it manages to be under the gun, under the assault of perhaps 10 individuals of the baboon for 10 seconds before it just gets up and runs off. And it's clear when it runs off that it doesn't have any bleeding injuries. And so what seems to have happened is the animal miscalculated. It tried to dash in and get a juvenile against the odds, but the male baboons in the group, perhaps because they could see instantly that it was not a fully mature animal, showed great bravado and took it on in full spate. And then, shall we include in our commentary what happened the following day with the porcupines at the same location?
Yeah, certainly. Explains that it's how it's likely to be an adolescent.
Yeah. So it was remarkable enough that 2 different tourists got video footage of this interaction between the baboons and the leopard. But even more remarkably, at the very same place on the following day, what seems to be the same individual of the leopard showed its inexperience once again by dabbling with an adult female porcupine and its 2 well-grown juveniles all of which do what the African porcupines normally do, which is to stand their ground, counter-threaten, rattle their quills, and do some sudden backwards moves in order to impale the aggressor with their quills. And perhaps there's two remarkable things about how the leopard behaves towards the porcupines on this instance. One is that it does seem to think that it can attack them, which it plainly can't really, because it takes an experienced and somewhat it takes a leopard that's had enough experience to have a few nasty encounters with a porcupine to know exactly how to deal with it, which is to flip it over and get to its underbelly. This animal doesn't have the experience for that. But what it does try to do is the mistake that many cats make, which is to pat the quills of the porcupine to see what happens. And as usual, its paw gets impaled, visibly impaled with at least one or two quills. And then it does something that's quite remarkable in a way that hasn't really been mentioned in many commentaries before. And that is that it simply pulls the quill out with its teeth. You can see this in other footage and other photographs of the leopard having attacked a porcupine. And what's remarkable about that is if you or I get impaled with the quill of a porcupine, you're not going to pull it out instantly. It's agonizingly painful because the quill isn't simply a spear-like, needle-like device. It's got barbs that are so effective that they can drive that quill right into the subcutaneous zone over a period of days, so that a quill can migrate from your paw up your arm, or from your mouth right through your cheek, down your neck, and into your thorax, always under the skin before it finally comes out. And so those quills have a self-propelling device in the form of a set of barbs that not only ratchet it and secure it in the skin, but also propel it forward with the movements of the body. And so for the leopard simply to get in there instantly and rip that quill out indicates something intriguing, which is that in the course of evolution, the leopard has evolved a kind of a sensory system where it's either extremely stoic and just doesn't care about the pain, or it has some kind of neurological mechanism whereby the pain is not as intense for it as it would be for us.
Wow.
So the leopard still runs a great risk because it can be blinded, or it can be actually killed by a quill going into its lungs. So it's a great risk. But there's evidence that there's some counter adaptation on the part of the leopard, because it can sustain perhaps a greater level of injury with porcupine quills than other animals can, which enables it on some occasions to kill porcupines. There's plenty of footage on the web of porcupines having successfully, and the leopard and the lion having successfully killed the porcupine in Africa.
No, wonderful. And coming back to the baboons, do you think that encounter was risking death for the male baboons as well as the leopard, or is it almost a mock battle going on where they both animal realizes it's not worth going in for the kill because it's too dangerous? The baboons could potentially kill the leopard with their long canines, and the leopard could potentially kill a baboon by grabbing it by the neck. But it strikes me that it's almost a show encounter rather than real intent to kill one another, and then perhaps highlighted by the fact that the leopard casually bounds away as opposed to fleeing with great intensity.
Yes, well, your question is a very appropriate one, but it's difficult to say because we don't have enough real experience of these things.
Yeah.
People have observed the Chacma baboon and other species of baboons interacting with the leopard in several places over the decades. But overall, the picture is rather inconsistent, because it's not simply the case. If you read accounts by Sapolsky and others, several others, the baboon has been well studied in several places. It's not simply the case that the well-armed, massive male baboons of the group will simply take on a predator. It's inconsistent. Sometimes they don't bother. They don't seem to care about the welfare of the weaker members of the group of baboons, other than perhaps their own progeny, which are genetically related to them. Sometimes they do take on the predator, but there's no, it's a complex pattern. There's nothing really consistent about it. And in this case, I suspect, it's only a suspicion, but I suspect that the mental acuity of the baboon is so great, combined with its very good vision, that two things happened that prevented a fatality occurring in this group of baboons on this particular leopard attack. Number one, the baboons spotted the animal immediately, and so they denied it some of the aspect of surprise, because if it had been able to cover maybe half of the distance on the road before the animal gave an alarm call, things might have been very different. So the first line of defense for the baboons was being constantly eagle-eyed, and that includes the juveniles and the females, of course. So in a group of 25, which is what this was, the chances are there's one individual at least that's going to spot the leopard the moment it appears, the moment it puts its head above the grass or charges. So that's number one. Number two is, I suspect that this heroic male that we see appearing out of left field and basically running smack bang into the charging leopard was astute enough that it saw instantly that this was not a leopard to be feared, based on its body size, its body shape, being probably female, and its behavior, its rash behavior. And so I suspect the baboon is intelligent enough to realize that this particular adversary was worth just taking on in a way that it might not have done had this been an experienced male leopard, in which case perhaps everybody, including all of the mature male baboons in the group, would have just bolted and fled for their lives.
Right. And the leopard, once it's attacked, do you think that leopard is in serious danger there, or 99% of the time a leopard's going to come out relatively unscathed with 5 baboons trying to attack it?
No, I think it is in serious danger.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, you've got one 45-kilo cat being set upon by a group, including perhaps 3 adult male baboons, each of which has a set of canines longer than the canines of the cat and more damaging because they're designed to slice rather than simply to puncture.
Okay.
So had that not been a leopard with 20 sharp claws, I think that animal would have been killed. If, for example, a hunting dog or a wolf or some like-sized canid, well, the African hunting dog is only about 25 kilos, so it's not strictly comparable. But a wolf can often be 40 kilos, 45 kilos perhaps. So if, in a thought experiment, if you can imagine a single wolf charging in the same manner down the road into that group of baboons, and had been similarly headed off by one male, followed quickly by another 2 males plus sundry females in a scrum like that, I think that the wolf would have been killed fairly quickly, because it does not have the crucial defensive mechanism of the leopard, which is 20 claws that are so dangerous that even if they don't seriously injure the bodies of the attacking baboons, they're a real threat to the eyesight of the baboons, which the baboon is going to protect because its whole anti-predator strategy, as well as its social life, depends on its eyesight. And so a baboon is.
So, no, sorry to interrupt. No, carry on.
That's more or less it, yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out whether what the baboons are doing is the equivalent of Drongo's mobbing a tawny eagle, where they're telling this animal to get out of their space, or are they anticipating that they're going to kill this thing on the road? If the claws are that dangerous, then perhaps the baboons it's kind of a muck fight, and they're not actually going to go in for the kill with their canines because it's just way too dangerous. And so there's a mock fight that goes down, and eventually the leopard realizes, I can get out of here, and scampers away.
Yes, well, it's a complex thing to analyze, but let's consider the basic differences between mobbing behavior and defensive fighting. Now,
Yeah.
most animals that mob a predator are doing so mainly to embarrass the predator in a way that attracts attention from another possibly more powerful and more dangerous predator. That's one of the reasons why owls getting mobbed or ravens getting mobbed or falcons getting mobbed is a problem. It's because most predators are secretive, at least when they're hunting, and they don't want to draw attention, particularly in a place like the Kruger Park, where the spotted hyena and the lion will come rushing to any kind of disturbance on the off chance of getting a free meal and on the off chance of killing the original predator, because all of the top predators in the Kruger Park will hate each other with a vengeance and will gladly kill each other given any excuse. So that leopard doesn't want to create a ruckus that brings in other predators. And so it might be subject to mobbing behavior. But in this case, there's a difference, because it's not as if the baboons simply discovered this leopard in resting mode and then started to embarrass it. That would have been a problem for the leopard. But in this case, you don't need to invoke that cause, because a more parsimonious explanation is that they were simply defending themselves, and that given their rage and outrage at having been attacked in that blatant way, the males would certainly have cheerfully ripped that leopard apart if they could. Now, the fact that they didn't is more evidence of the supreme defense of the leopard rather than a reason to doubt their intentions and to think that they were just really going through some kind of analog of mobbing behavior. So my guess would be this was not mobbing behavior. I'm not denying that baboons will often mob leopards, certainly, but in this case, I would say that it was outright self-defense, and that had that leopard not been as well armed as cats are with its claws, it would have been annihilated.
Yeah, and if it had been an experienced adult leopard, there was a strong chance it would have run off with a juvenile. And coming back to the porcupines as well, this is, in summary, is this an adolescent leopard learning how to attack baboons and porcupines and failing, and the next time round it might get a bit closer to having a kill. And this is just what leopards need to go through. They're figuring out how to do this, so they might have to attack baboons and porcupines 10, 20 times before they figure out how to do this properly.
Yes, well, I don't think any zoologist who studied large carnivora would doubt that, because the whole life cycle of big cats shows very clearly that the juveniles remain naive and inept right up to the point that they achieve adult size.
Yeah.
The difference between carnivora and their prey is that the prey start foraging effectively when they're still suckling. But in the case of a leopard, it's been long weaned before it starts to hunt for itself, because between the weaning of the leopard juvenile and full independence comes a lengthy period in which it basically learns from the example of its mother.
Yeah.
And then even when it leaves its mother and starts to stake out on its own, it still has to go through quite a lot of trial and error with a lot of risk associated before it can actually be an effective hunter. Now, how would the scenario have played out had that leopard walking down the road been an experienced adult male of, say, 60, 65 kilograms with a big head and lots of fighting experience, including with baboons? Well, I suspect it simply wouldn't have attacked at all. I suspect that it would have simply come across that group of baboons and kept on walking. It would have spooked them and would have got them to run inadvertently, but I don't think it would have gone in there, because I think it would have figured out that, the odds of snatching a juvenile were too low. Alternatively, it might have stalked more effectively. It might have spotted the baboons from some distance and then really done a proper stalk, crouching low and really trying to narrow the distance before dashing in. So it would either have hunted more effectively or it would have desisted from hunting, but it would not have done what this naive juvenile or adolescent — it's not a juvenile, it's an adolescent leopard — what this adolescent did, which is essentially just simply to charge in impetuously on the off chance that it might score a juvenile baboon. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And it makes me wonder how human teenagers, how adept they would have been at hunting. I'd imagine they'd make a lot of mistakes as well. Firing the arrow at the wrong time, or throwing the spear at the wrong time. So we've got that in common with leopards.
Yes, I think that's a feature of adolescence. Obviously, in humans, it's more a masculine feature, the risk-taking behavior. And in humans, we kind of associate it with a brain that's not fully formed until a man is about 25. And so we can understand the impetuous and risk-taking behavior of adolescent males. But in the case of the female, I think the leopard, I think the females and males are similar in the sense that they're both going to take what we consider to be rather reckless risks until they're fully adult and fully experienced, because they have a much shorter life. They only live about 15 years and they have to get on with it. And they breed fast enough to compensate for some unfortunate mishaps along the way. So I think, to summarize, for me, the highlights of this set of video clips is that, firstly, what's the most outstanding feature is the heroism, the gallantry, as it were, of a particular individual male baboon who just basically runs towards the danger instantly. And risks his life by confronting the leopard head on, And the second most interesting feature is that, despite having been in a melee of, say, 10 baboons for 10 seconds, 10 to 11 seconds, the leopard gets away unscathed, even with its inexperience. That's very telling. And then thirdly, the fact that same leopard was seen at the same place on a subsequent day messing with porcupines, it gives us an unusually complete picture of how one animal goes about learning how to hunt in the Kruger Park.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for those insights, Anthony, and look forward to diving into other videos with you soon in upcoming podcasts.
Thanks. That was fun. Listeners, please like, subscribe, and share. And we look forward to seeing you for our next item on exploring the BioEdge. Over and out for now.
Cheers.
Cheers.